right.
Right.
Well, just let me know. Let me know when you hit record.
Good to go.
Good to go. All right. Well, John, hello. Welcome back to this thing that
This
we do.
thing, man.
This thing that
Golly,
we've been doing for 4 seasons.
it does not
It
feel that long.
it doesn't.
It's weird.
It
I'm
doesn't. To
about to
think
get.
that we've reviewed that much stuff.
I feel like I'm getting real nostalgic when you put it in that context of like, it feels like last week that we were in your apartment across the table recording about oh, what even was it? Was it the Long Halloween? Or would
We
that have
did
been
that one
Hush?
and
The one that was actually in your apartment.
I think that was I want to say that was The Long Halloween and Hush,
Okay.
possibly. The
Very
last
possible.
thing that the last thing that you and I recorded together in the apartment was Sonic.
Because we went to go see that. Yeah.
Yep, and Antonio was our guest on that one.
So
He went with us to see the movie.
so very recent and not years ago.
Fairly recent. You
Yeah.
wouldn't recognize him now.
You shoot up like a weed.
Oh yeah, hairstyles completely different. His facial structure, like when they're little kids, like it's mostly just like round, you
Yeah.
know. But now his face has gotten like longer, so like he's just looking older. It's wild. They grow up so fast. They really, really do.
Yeah.
But kind of like this show.
It's so much different than it used to be. I don't feel like I can even fake that very well.
I know. Where would our show be? Does a podcast age like a dog? Like is it like they actually age faster? So is our podcast in its
Oh, that's
teenage years?
interesting.
Like its awkward teenage years?
It's aging like Groot, just very confusingly.
Yes. Speaking of which, topic for today, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We are a very spoiler heavy podcast. So if you haven't seen it yet and you are wanting to see it for yourself and you don't want anything spoiled, probably best to not listen to the movie review portion of this podcast. Everything else should be fine. But that I would stay away from that if you don't want that spoiled. But welcome back to another episode of They Didn't Ask Us. I'm Jay. This is John.
It's me.
And we are here to give you our opinions on stuff, whether you asked for it or not.
So far it's
We prefer that
been
you didn't, because then that would stick to
it's
the name
our
of the
whole
show.
brand, yeah. It's been a tricky one recently. I feel like we've had some people asking, and it's like, hold on, this is Jeopardy? Can you phrase that in the form of a statement? It's the reverse
Yes.
Jeopardy.
Uh-huh.
So it's not really an ask so much as a just a concept or a theory. Anyway,
Exactly.
what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I have been counting down the days to tomorrow at the time of this recording.
You're not staying up
Tomorrow
to
is
get it tonight.
Friday. Man, I'm going to be honest with you. It is going to be hard. I really think it might be difficult to go to sleep tonight. Like that's how excited I feel like a kid before Christmas.
Yeah.
Like that's how excited I am right now. For those who are confused, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the long awaited sequel to Breath of the Wild, comes out tonight, tomorrow.
It will be out by the time the show releases.
Yes.
Jay
Which
will
is
have
a
finished it
Friday.
and it will be on his third replay.
No, I'm not that bad. But I pre-ordered it and it's a digital download. So I don't have to it's
I was about
already
to say,
downloaded on the Switch.
so it just becomes active at like 2 in the morning or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now it's sitting there, it's ready to go. All I got to do is wait for that time and click the A button and it will take me in to
I
just
rule.
an amazing place.
Did they ever confirm the pronunciation of the title? Is it Tears or Tears?
It's tears.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact in the last trailer that they had, which got me more excited than probably anything else so far. Zelda is actually holding this thing that looks like a bean almost. And I think that that might actually be one of the tiers of the kingdom. And that's what you're having to collect is these tiers.
If you plant it, does it sprout a magic beanstalk that you climb and go fight a giant?
I mean, if you haven't seen the trailer, there is some islands in the sky. So
So what
that
you're
is
saying is
entirely possible.
no, but maybe.
No, but maybe. Yep.
Oh man.
So anyway, but yeah, so very excited about that. I've been doing a countdown on my Instagram, and every day I've been doing because I don't know if this is something to brag about, but I've played every Zelda game, and so I can honestly review each one. And so I have been on my Instagram where I've posted a picture of the game itself and then given like a few sentence like review of it and then giving it a rating.
Okay. So before Tears of the Kingdom comes out, what is your top 3 Legend of Zelda games?
Top 3
Yeah.
would be Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time, and I'm actually a pretty big fan of Twilight Princess as well. I do also like Wind Waker. They're right there beside each
No
other.
Majora's Mask?
I I found, and pun intended, it was
Oh
very
no.
repetitive. It was very repetitive.
I mean, at
It
some
felt
level,
like you were living the same day over and over and over again.
I is that not the whole thing? I'm confused cuz I've never completed a Legend of Zelda game. I've dabbled, but I've never like start
Really?
to finish sat down and play and gone through one.
Wow.
So I'm very much not eligible to have an opinion on the topic. And I, like, as such, I value the opinions of the people who are like, no, 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 these are the best and here's why. Or here are some of the things that I didn't like in what I would call the worst. So, I mean, stuff like that I feel like is really interesting to me.
Yeah. The probably the one I liked the least was the um Legend of Zelda Adventures of Link, the second one. Um it was a side scroller and
Oh,
it was weird. It
that
was
is
very
weird.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I don't
actually
much
kind of
care for that.
surprising. It's kind of surprising that they actually made more after that because it is really bad. Like it's not I mean I guess other people liked it. I did not. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's curious to think about now looking back, like whenever the second one came out, and I'm sure it didn't like truly bomb because I mean people still talk about it. I imagine there are still people who play it, But like imagine if that happened today in like the everything has to be a hit economy that we're
Yeah.
in right now,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh well, we'll just have to move on to something else. But
Right.
they had people who were committed to it, who stuck by it, and now it is like one of the more well-known names, if not more well understood, because obviously there are people who still think Zelda is Link, Link is Zelda. Like there's that whole thing that happens.
Right. Right. Right.
But like not getting any of the games after that game, like it's so weird to think about what would happen and then like what could have happened if other studios were like, no, we know we have something here, we're sticking by it.
Yeah. Yeah, each game has not it's not all the same. It's not just carbon copies of each other. It is close. It does follow somewhat the same similar formula
Yeah,
as many adventure games. There's something happening with the kingdom, and the person that you're playing is the only person that can save the kingdom.
of course.
And so he has to go and, rescue the princess from the bad guy, and he gets his handy sword in the process. Um, you know, it it's that is the same in each one. What?
Sorry, I feel like I've started a Legend of Zelda game and gotten to the point where you get your first sword, because you never get the Master Sword first. That's why it's called the
No.
Master Sword. But when I'm envisioning that scene in my head, you know the music from Pokemon whenever someone gives you an item?
Uh-huh.
That's the music that plays in my head, and it is not right at all.
Nope.
So I'm just
That
like,
is
yeah, that's
completely
that's incredibly wrong.
yeah, very much.
Oh man.
Yeah. What about you?
Uh I mean not really a whole lot. Call of Duty just had a big update, so I've been kind of grinding that a little bit. Soccer season is in full swing now, so I've been going to games, hanging out with those folks. I haven't really gotten into Jedi Survivor yet. I'm wanting the. I'll tell you my fear. My fear was is that this game's gonna come out and it's gonna be just absolutely broken, even on
Mm,
PC,
mm.
and I'm gonna give it a minute to get some patches out, some bug fixes, and then I think it'll be fine. Because
I
at
think
some
that's
point, there is a certain amount of grace between like, all right, no spoilers, no spoilers, no spoilers. Well, it's been long enough. And that's what I want to avoid. Is the
okay.
it's been long enough. We can talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, I understand that, and honestly, I feel the same way, except for the added. I've also told myself I'm not going to buy a new generation game until I have a new console.
yeah.
Um, so there's that. Um, that's why I haven't bought it. But also, I have that same mindset, very much like you, where I'm like, I want this game really bad, but I want it to be really good when I play it. So I'm going to
Yeah.
give it some time, let everybody else be the guinea pigs, and then I'll enjoy it when it's at its best.
Yeah. Somewhat frustratingly, that's not what I've heard about Tears of the Kingdom, is that it's coming out flawless.
No, I would imagine so. They've
And I'm
been
just
working
like,
on it for
ugh,
like
dang it,
4 years or
Nintendo.
something.
Why do you have to commit to doing something well if you're going to do it at all? Why
Right.
can't you just be like every other game studio and just release broken games and oh
They
yeah, we'll
care
do a
so much about their
content
product.
updates to fix the stuff we knew was broken 6 months ago.
Yeah,
No, Nintendo just has to care
they care so much about their
so
they have a
much.
reputation.
That's yeah.
They have a reputation and they want to keep that reputation
And
up.
they have
It's the
earned
same
it.
Well, it's the same reason. I mean, think about the Metroid game that was announced and it was like almost done, and then they scrapped the entire project because the develop like the I don't know who, but somebody higher up came in to look at it, and they were like, "No, this ain't gonna do it. This ain't gonna cut it. We don't like it."
I
And
don't know that I had
so
heard that.
they scrapped the entire thing and went back to ground to and started at zero.
And that's for Dread.
That's for no, not Dread. That's for Metroid. They're making another Metroid game like the one on like the first person,
Like Prime.
like Prime. Yeah.
Okay.
And so they're doing that, but they want it to be really, really good. And so they were like, nope, we gotta start over. And so they're starting over.
Sorry, this is a 9.5. We only do 10s at Nintendo.
Yeah,
It's
get
in the
that out of
name.
here.
It's not N 5 N 9.5 though. It is Nintendo.
That's good. All right. Well, yes. So, but if you want to hear more, I guess I'll go ahead and say it now, before we get into everything else. So, next episode is actually our bonus episode for this month, and that's actually what John and I are going to be talking about is video games. At that point, maybe John will have played a little bit of Fallen Order, or no,
I
not Fallen
expect to
Order.
have,
Excuse
yeah.
me. Um,
Yeah. I may see if I could get
what's the
into
name
it.
of it? What's the
Star Wars Jedi
Survivor?
Survivor.
Survivor. And then I will have played hopefully
A good
several
chunk.
hours
Yeah.
into Tears of the Kingdom, and I can give you a brief overview of that. But so tune in next time for that. But first,
The
we have this episode to
news.
get through. We got news.
Very mild
Some
news so far.
yeah, some stuff. We got some stuff. So Disney is a little bit in trouble, maybe. So Disney has lost 4 million subscribers in the second quarter of 2023 alone.
So that
And
is
if
since
you
April 1st.
since April 1st, so the second quarter isn't even done yet,
Yeah.
and they've already lost 4 million subscribers. That's the largest amount that they've had, the largest loss that they've had since the final quarter of 2022, which was 2.4 million. And this is worldwide, so this
Right.
isn't just US, but still
Yeah.
pretty substantial.
I mean it's not nothing. But
It's definitely not nothing.
part of my question is that accounting for like the people who like if you're through I think it might be Verizon, like one of the phone companies who's like, and as part of, you signing up to work with us, we'll give you a year of free Disney Plus.
Yeah,
And then that year ends and they're like,
yeah,
"Well, I'll just bring it back whenever they release something I want."
hmm
So it's like, "All right, well, no." And it's those type of like free subscriptions that have fallen off cuz that's the type
maybe.
of thing that falls off in a wave. And that's
Yeah,
not going to look great. But also, I mean, they have kind of stagnated, I feel like. There's only so many live action remakes you can do before people stop caring. And we approached that a couple of years ago.
yeah, with the first one.
Dang.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it's super bad, but at the same time, Disney has said that they've already started to pull some of the content off of the streaming service due to this loss. They say
Like
it's due
what? What
to
are they
a strict.
pulling?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but they have said that they're in the process of pulling some content off the streaming service due to this loss, and they claim that it is due to a strategic rethink. So I think
Ah, yes.
they are overly concerned that it's because of the kind of content that they are releasing that it's, I guess, offending people, and they're not wanting to I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Your face is correct.
I'm just
Where it's like I'm not
confused.
sure what it is.
Like I would want to see, and I used to this is kind of embarrassing to actually admit, but like when I was younger, probably like when I was in college or like the immediate years after college, towards the end of every month, I would always like get on the blogs and see what had been confirmed to be leaving streaming services, what was going to be added to streaming services. And I feel like I would want to see that type of like news release before I have like a super hot take about this.
Yeah,
Because if they're taking away a bunch of stuff that I've never heard of, then it's not that I'm not going to care, because I mean, as to the point that we'll address in a minute, like people worked hard on that. They deserve some type of credit for that, but it doesn't impact me personally. So even though it doesn't
sure.
impact me personally, like that doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
Right. No, I agree. And I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think anybody's guess at this point is as good as, anyone else's. We could throw darts at a board and that would be just as
It
accurate.
probably would actually.
But I mean, I do know that, there has been some people, shocker, there has been some people that are disappointed with, some of the Star Wars content that has been released. Um, I wouldn't be
No,
surprised. I know, right?
surely not.
I wouldn't be surprised if like all 4 million of those subscribers are the ones that finished Mandalorian and then they were like, "Okay, I don't care about anything else on this platform." And
Well,
they
Visions
left.
just came out. I say, having not watched any of season 2 of Visions.
You know, real quick, just a quick take on that. Um, my oldest and I we've watched maybe the first 4 episodes.
hmm
So far, I'm not impressed. First season is so far, I would say the first season is much better.
I feel like the first season of Visions is going to ultimately go like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, where you go in with no expectations as a viewer and it grabs you in such a way that when you try to replicate it, you cannot do it well.
Yeah,
And
I could see that.
that's not to say season 2 won't have like its very high moments, but I feel like its baseline is going to be lower solely because people have higher expectations. So, and again, I say that having not seen it. It could be just bad, and I am going to walk this back sometime in the future, but I don't think
I
that's
will. Well,
necessarily the case.
I'll be interested to hear your take on. There's one episode that is super dark, very very dark. And I'll be interested to see what you think about that because it was, yeah. Antonio and I both were like, "Ooh,
Yeesh.
man, that was rough."
Do you have a typical time that you watch things other
Yeah,
than
it's
just
usually
like,
like 8:30.
okay. So for where we are in the world now, 8:30 isn't like dark, but the sun is going down.
Yeah,
And then as we go into summer, that time becomes later and later, like the sun stays up longer. That's just kind of how time works. Um I feel like I want to watch things when it's dark, like physically, not
yeah,
necessarily like emotionally or mentally or any of that stuff. But like if I'm watching stuff up here in my room, like I have a string of LEDs that goes around like near the ceiling, but I'll turn off these other lights
yeah,
and just really try to engross myself in what I'm watching.
yeah.
And like knowing that exists, like I might be like, it's Saturday afternoon. I don't have anything else to do. The sun is
That
bright.
would probably be a better time to watch it.
Because I remember, like, I don't remember what years of my life it was, but there was a period of time where my family was a road trip family. We were not a flying anywhere family. Um, and my sisters and I all got little portable DVD players.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
would sit down and shut up in the car. And I want to say we were driving like to Florida or somewhere, and we were like halfway through Georgia, and my like 15-year-old self is watching The Silence of the Lambs just in the bright daylight.
That's awesome.
And
That
I'm
is
just like,
so.
this is what I want to watch this. If I watch this at night, it might freak me out. I watched it for the first time, and I was just like, all right, well, this is a movie. Like I'm glad I
Yeah.
watched this in the middle of the day.
Wow. What a great movie, though.
Isn't it?
Ah, so good.
It's the only one of those that I've
Um,
seen. I haven't seen any of the sequels or the TV show.
I've heard the TV show is actually pretty good.
I have as well.
But anyway, speaking of TV shows and everything else that's going to be coming out, there's a writer strike.
Well, going to be coming out is uh
Yeah.
eventually
So
probably.
there's a writer strike going on, and lots of things have been affected already, including Saturday Night Live, all the late night hosts, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, um, Stephen Colbert, all those people have been affected immediately because they have new shows every week, every day. And so they're constantly needing new writers, and there's a writer strike going on right now. So all of that's been affected, as well as some of the stuff that we've been looking forward to. So Daredevil Born Again has been halted because of the writer strike, as well
Mm-hmm.
as Andor's production has also been halted due to the writer strike. So that's fun. And I don't know. I'm glad that they're halting it instead of trying to continue it because, John, I don't know if you remember the last writer's strike that there was.
I remember there was one during Lost, right?
There's one during
And there was
Lost
one in
and
like the mid
Smallville,
2000s or
and
2010s.
yeah, yeah, it was
Wasn't there one in
like,
the 2010s?
no, I want to say it was 2006,
Okay.
but
It was
whenever
not
it
great.
was, whenever it was, man, they tried to continue on with those shows and it was horrible. It was so bad.
On a scale of 1 to the Star Wars prequels, how bad was the writing?
Oh man, for Smallville, because
Yeah.
that's the one I remember the most. On a scale of 1 to Star Wars prequels, it was pretty close to being prequel style. It was rough.
Sorry, I thought of the Star Wars prequels, and obviously May the 4th was somewhat recently. And May the 4th is the next day is Cinco de Mayo, and I saw a meme where it was the
I saw
Mustafar
this.
scene where yeah, it's Revenge of the Fifth. Anakin is like, it's Revenge of the Fifth, and Padme is like, no, it's Cinco de Mayo. And Anakin looks up at Obi-Wan in the ship, and he goes, "You've turned her against me." But it's Obi-Wan with like a big mustache and a sombrero
It's got
and maracas.
Morocco. I
It's
loved that
so
meme.
dumb, but it sent me, dude. I
It's
died at
great.
my office. And then I had to explain it to somebody who doesn't really know memes or Star Wars.
Oh
It
no,
was not a great experience.
that's rough. I'm gonna pause my video for a second,
Okay.
uh, because there is a mosquito,
Get
and
it.
I'm gonna.
Kill it dead.
Got it. Okay, I'm back.
We
Sorry.
back. That's a really fast mosquito killing.
Thank you.
I feel like I must be very inaccurate. Mine always take me longer than that.
Well, he had landed, and that's why I was like, I gotta do this now because
Yeah.
he's gonna take off soon.
Otherwise, you won't find him until he's like on your leg. And you're like, ah,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. Yeah, he'll be on my face, and you'll be like, "What's that thing? Where?" Um, Yeah. There was another one I saw where they were talking about the potential for George Lucas to take control of Star Wars again. Like it still be with
Uh,
Disney, but he be more in charge, like he be more involved. And then it was the scene with Jar Jar Binks giving emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor, but instead it said to George Lucas.
oh no. I was about to say, I don't know that I'd like that any better.
Yeah, I don't know either. I do know that I it's kind of funny. I brought you up in conversation with my son because I said, John has a really good point that like every property like that has such a huge fan following, they need somebody who's an expert on the universe to be present during all of these filming and writing so that they can say like that's not something that would exist in this universe. Not
Yeah.
to like give their own input, but just to
That doesn't
say
pass
like,
lore.
yeah,
Doesn't
that
pass the lore
that
test.
doesn't exactly. And so my thought was that's probably what they should do with George Lucas. Like not even say like you're not going to contribute to anything. You're just going to make sure that we're not putting something in there that
I
goes against what you've established.
don't know that I want the person in charge of like lore continuity to be the guy who had the hero kiss his sister.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like I think there are absolutely people more qualified for that on the internet where they already think it's their job to like
Mhm.
go around and police like fan conversations. I don't know how, I don't know what happened to my Facebook algorithm, but like I've interacted with enough various Mandalorian related things where it has like suggested like post you might like is like Mandalorian cosplay groups, and they are hardcore, dude. They're just like, well, I really like your design, but it's like a millimeter out of spec, so it can't be approved. And I'm just like,
Ridiculous.
what do you mean? This is all made up. It's
Ridiculous.
a hobby.
Yeah.
So, like, there's someone who exists, not necessarily in a group like that, because that is like a niche within a niche, but like, there's somebody somewhere more qualified to be the keeper of the lore for Star Wars than George Lucas.
Maybe. I don't know.
He might wear silly hats and his name might be Dave Filoni, but who's to say?
And then, last but not least in the news, Jonathan Majors, who plays Kang, the Conqueror, in the MCU, he got in trouble recently. He did some things he probably shouldn't have, and so uh, I don't know how reliable this source was. I didn't check to see where they got their info, but they said that he is looking at potentially a year in prison. So will he still be involved with the MCU?
Tune in
That's a
next time
great
for
question. That
leave
is
it
a
with one of
great
those
question.
Dragon Ball Z spoilers or teasers. Will there be a
Found out. Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Will there be too much dialogue followed by 45 seconds of fighting? Tune in next time.
Absolutely.
Oh
That's what
man,
we're all about.
you're not wrong. Ordinarily, I feel like this is the part of the show where we would do we want to talk about the writer's strike at all? Is there any more to get into that? Cuz I don't
Not
really know what's
really.
going on. I know they're bitter about
It's
like they're
they're
not
bitter
getting
about their
their
pay.
cut of the
They're not
streaming
getting
thing.
their yeah, they're not getting their cut for stuff. Is that what it is? The
I think
streaming
so.
stuff?
Is because I
Okay.
guess the way, so whenever the last writer strike would have been when they renegotiated, no one accounted for streaming blowing up like it has.
Mm.
So I would imagine their rate is not what it should be.
Well, and and the way I see it too, no offense if you listen to this and you're a writer, first off, that's cool. Like, I don't know how you found this podcast, but
Give us
awesome.
credit.
Yeah. But, and I'm not saying it's all writers, but obviously you and I have talked a lot about movies here, movies, TV shows, streaming stuff that we're like, what were the writers thinking?
Yeah.
Like what was going through their head when they were doing this? And, so I don't know. Like maybe this will weed out like the good ones from the ones that are maybe not serious about their job. Maybe.
Potentially. Um, I feel like if anything, it's gonna just cause. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to say cause or effect. I'm just gonna. I
Yeah.
typically, when it's something like this, and one party feels aggrieved, and one party is Scrooge McDucking in piles of cash, I tend to agree with the aggrieved party on principle,
Yeah.
because I myself am not Scrooge McDucking in a pile of cash. So that
Right.
is where my empathy lies.
Yeah. And I do see their point, like, yeah, they should be paid, continue to get paid because this is something that, like, you know, if your show gets put back, the show that you wrote for gets put back on a streaming service for however long, like, you should get a cut of that. Like, it makes sense. You worked really hard to write, because that's, I think, let's, what was oh, Deadpool, the beginning of Deadpool, where it was like going through the people that made the movie.
The
And then they
sarcastic
said,
credits, yeah.
yeah, but they said, and let's be honest, the true heroes of this movie, the writers. And it was like, yeah, I mean, a lot of times it is the writers
Well,
that
yeah, who do
they're
you
the
think
ones
wrote
that
the
make or
credits?
break the movie.
Even if the writing had been horrible, that joke still would have been in there because the writers wrote the credits.
Right.
Oh man. When's that movie coming
So,
out? Do we have a release window for that yet, or is it just like
no.
soon, which could be like next week or it could be in like 3 years?
Yeah,
It's not
something like
next
that.
week. I'm confident it is not next week.
It is not next week, no. It's going to be either 2024 or later, I would think.
At this point I would expect later, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, I would say probably will be 40. I'll be 40.
So
You'll still
I'll be
be
a
in your
spry 39.
All right. Well, with that, let's get into the main reason why you're here today. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. As I told John before we started recording, I said I have a lot of opinions on this movie. Most of them are good. Some of them are not so good, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So first, we have a quick summary. Like I
Oh, I
said,
don't know about quick. I'm going to do my
well,
best.
we have a summary. And for those, if you didn't catch it earlier, this is your last chance. We are a very spoiler heavy podcast. We record this and say and talk about it in the assumption that you have already watched it yourself. So just be aware of that before you start listening. But John, please.
At their new headquarters on Nowhere, the Guardians of the Galaxy are attacked by Adam Warlock, a sovereign warrior created by their high priestess Aisha. After Adam overpowers them all and fatally wounds Rocket, he is stabbed by Nebula and forced to flee. The Guardians are unable to tend to Rocket's wounds due to a kill switch made by the company OrgoCorp embedded inside him. They travel to OrgoCorp's headquarters to find the override code. As Rocket lies unconscious, he recalls his past being experimented on by the High Evolutionary, a scientist who sought to enhance and anthropomorphize, that's a fun word, animal life forms to create a counter Earth. Also seen in the flashback, Rocket's friends, the otter Lila, the walrus Teefs, and the rabbit Floor. The High Evolutionary is impressed with Rocket's intelligence.
Creepy rabbit.
Yeah, I don't love the rabbit. The High Evolutionary is impressed with his intelligence, but furious that it exceeded his own. He perfects his experiments with Rocket's advice, but orders Rocket's brain to be extracted and his friends incinerated. Rocket frees Lila, only for the High Evolutionary to shoot her in front of him. Rocket mauls the High Evolutionary and kills his guards, but Teefs and Floor are killed in the chaos. Alone, Rocket steals a spaceship and flees. In the present, the alternate version of Gamora, who has joined the Ravagers, helps the Guardians infiltrate OrgoCorp. They retrieve Rocket's file, but discover that the code had been removed. The group speculates one of the High Evolutionary's advisors had it, so they depart for Counter-Earth. They are followed by Aisha and Adam, who are ordered by their creator, also the High Evolutionary, to retrieve Rocket to harvest his brain. Upon arriving, the team is helped by residents in tracing the advisor to the High Evolutionary ship. Drax and Mantis remain with Gamora and Rocket as Peter, Groot, and Nebula travel to the High Evolutionary ship. Nebula is forced to wait outside by guards as Quill and Groot board. Drax and Mantis pursue Quill's group. They have 2 brain cells between them and they're fighting for 3rd place. That's not in the summary, that is my own addition. The High Evolutionary initiates his destruction and planned reconstruction of Counter-Earth, which kills all life on the planet, including Sovereign High Priestess Aisha. As his ship enters orbit, Quill and Groot leap off and kill the advisor, retrieving the code. Gamora arrives with their ship to rescue them, while Nebula, Mantis, and Drax board the High Evolutionary ship to rescue Peter and Groot, even though they jumped off. As Quill's group attempts to access the code, Rocket flatlines and has a near-death experience where he reunites with Lila, Teefs, and Floor. Lila tells him that his time has not yet come as Quill uses the code to disable the kill switch and save Rocket's life. Nebula, Mantis, and Drax come across hundreds of imprisoned human-like children on the High Evolutionary ship before being captured. Quill's group sets out to rescue the 3 who are placed in a chamber with monstrous abelisks. Mantis befriends the abelisks, allowing the group to escape and reunite with Peter's group, together overcoming the High Evolutionary's army. Kraglin and Cosmo arrive on Nowhere, which is now a spaceship, which is a weird concept. Cosmo creates a telekinetic tunnel connecting Nowhere to the High Evolutionary ship to free the children. Rocket discovers imprisoned animals on the ship before being attacked by the High Evolutionary, but the rest of the Guardians help subdue him, leaving him to perish on his ship. The Guardians rescue the animals and lead them aboard Nowhere. Peter nearly dies trying to save his Zune. Sorry, I had laughed at Zune. But is saved by Adam, who had a change of heart.
Did you have a Zune?
I did not. I was
did.
iPod.
I did have a Zune.
He is saved by Adam, who had a change of heart after being saved by Groot. In the aftermath, Peter leaves the Guardians, bestowing captaincy to Rocket before leaving for Earth to reunite with his grandfather. Mantis embarks on a journey of self-discovery. Gamora reunites with the Ravagers, and Nebula and Drax remain on Nowhere to raise the rescued children. In the mid-credit scene, the new Guardians, consisting of Rocket, Groot, Cosmo, Kraglin, Adam, Fila, one of the rescued children.
I think it's Fila.
Okay. And Adam's pet Blurp take on a new mission. In the credit scene, Quill eats breakfast with his grandfather.
Yeah.
So.
And then it ends saying
the legendary Star-Lord will return.
Yeah.
I want to.
I have a.
Can I start out with the thing that surprised me the most about this movie?
Sure.
I think going into this movie, it was known, it was discussed, it was the preeminent thought that Volume 3 is the final movie of this trilogy. That's the try is 3. So it's the end of this plot. It's the final movie with this team, with this makeup. The common thought that I attributed, or that I also had, not everyone is going to make it. Yeah. I expected multiple, multiple Guardians to die in this movie.
Yeah.
Kind of like Suicide Squad that James Gunn also did that we talked about somewhat recently. Just kind of a smattering throughout the movie. Not everyone's going to make it. So when we get to the credits, we get to the end of the credits after the post-credits scene, and they're all alive, even though the team has split up. I was shocked.
I was a little bit as well. Yes. I'm glad that Star-Lord did not die the way that we thought he was going to die.
What happened to his
Um,
mask, by the way?
okay, so can I just before we even get started, I've got two theories about this movie.
Oh, let's go.
I've
Let's
got
go.
two theories about this movie. One, I think Sean Gunn, no, not Sean Gunn,
James Gunn.
James Gunn.
I was like,
Sean
Kraglin?
is in it, but James Gunn, I think he wrote this entire script, got it all done, and then the Marvel, like they reviewed it, and then they came back to James and they were like, "Hey guy, hey, listen, James, we love it. This is so good. This is great. This might be the best you've done so far. There's just one problem. We had you introduce Adam Warlock, and you haven't used him at all in your script." And he was like, "You're right."
I
And
was
so
hoping
he
you'd
had to
forget
go
about
back
that.
through and had to put in Adam Warlock, because if you look at every single scene that Adam is in, Adam Warlock, he really doesn't add to the story at all, except for the very beginning and the
Right.
very end. And so I think that that's where he threw in. He was like, you know what? Instead of Rocket being injured by whatever, he's going to be injured by Adam Warlock. And at the end, instead of Peter making it across the thing by putting on his mask and having his rocket boots on, instead Adam's going to come in and he's going to save him. And that was how he tied him in.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my first theory. My second theory is that um, Gunn was completely okay with killing off Gamora, and he obviously had no connection to them bringing back Gamora. And so he was like, okay, crap. Now I've got this character that I've got to mess with that I originally didn't want to be here. Like I thought she was done. And so in turn what happened was is he had to write her in, but kind of the same thing. Like he wrote her in, gave her really a pretty minimal, you know, playing part, and then at the end there's like no reconnection at all. It's just like, oh, okay, well, see ya,
Yeah.
and then she has her own family.
Yeah. I wasn't there like this this movie never like breaks the fourth wall like Deadpool does, but it's
Mm-hmm.
very meta a lot. And I feel like there's a reference to or somewhere like on Twitter or something I had seen like, oh wow, like James Gunn loves when his characters are taken in other movies and killed. And I don't know if that was a joke made in this movie or if it was something that I just saw on Twitter, but I don't know that. I think your first theory is incredibly more plausible than your second because like you're
Yeah.
saying, he can be explained out of pretty much like Adam Warlock can be explained out of every scene he's in. One thing I learned about the Guardians of the Galaxy movies in the lead up to this movie is James Gunn writes the songs into the script.
Oh, cool.
So he's done it since the beginning. So like the first Guardians of the Galaxy scene where Peter has his little headphones on and he's dancing around getting the Power Stone.
Yeah,
he's actually like listening to that in the moment.
as he's writing it.
Like it's
That's cool.
played, no, like it's played on set.
Oh, okay. So, oh, okay, cool.
And
That's so cool.
as a little bit of an aside, I think it was with this movie. This was the first time he ever tried to get rights to a song, and someone told him no.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
really curious what that song is.
Yeah.
Um, but like knowing that as part of his creative process, it's very like it makes so much more sense to why this like the scenes fit the song so well. So like at the beginning of the movie when Rocket is like just solo walking around to like an acoustic cover of Creep by Radiohead. That's not an uplifting song. I don't know if you're aware or not.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
Um
not.
so it very much sets the tone for the one scene where Adam Warlock makes sense. Um well not the mid-credit scene he makes sense. I think part of it too is to like the Sovereign were announced as this like weird like entity species thing in a previous movie that I haven't watched either of the previous movies in a really long time, to be honest with you. And then it was just kind of like the bombshell, right? The air quote bombshell that the High Evolutionary created them as well. So does that make Rocket and Adam Warlock stepbrothers?
In theory, yeah.
I don't know that I like that.
Yeah,
That's weird.
it's a little weird.
Everyone forget that I just said that. We're gonna move on. Um, so I went into this movie and I told pretty much anybody who would listen, which is like 3 people. If Rocket dies in this movie, I'm gonna cry, and I
Yeah.
cried.
I still cried. He didn't die, but
Like
I
he
did
well,
cry.
the way that I balanced that with my emotional being is he died and then came back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And then the after credit scene where Peter is getting breakfast with his grandpa, who he hasn't seen in like 20 years. And his grandpa just wrecked it. Like immediately, he's just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And then the newspaper his grandpa was reading was talking about how Kevin Bacon was kidnapped in the holiday special.
Yeah.
Oh man, like that got me. It was one emotional cry and one like happy cry. But this movie made me cry twice. Um Gosh, Rocket has such a horrifying backstory.
Horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. And this villain, man, I would actually said this to Antonio on the way home after seeing the movie at 2 o'clock in the morning.
You saw it late.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And we were on our way home, and I said, with all the trouble that Kang has gotten into here recently, if the MCU does boot him and they're like, yeah, you know what, we're not going to go with you anymore, I would be okay if they made this guy the ultimate villain.
Or like it well I mean the High Evolutionary, as the plot summary reads, he died when his ship exploded.
However, like you've said before,
Was there a body?
don't see a body.
But what I was going to say, the workaround to that could be, what if that was a multiverse Kang? What if the High Evolutionary is like that High Evolutionary is Kang in another multiverse and he came to this one to just dabble and play around?
I mean, they could twist it like that. I would be okay with that just because I mean, he was evil, man.
Yeah. I think
He was very evil.
he might be the most irredeemably evil villain Marvel has had since like the Red Skull.
Yeah.
And they both had, those weird face masks and red skulls. So
Oh gosh, when his face was
it
removed,
was grotesque.
that was horrible.
That's like
And I was like, man, Rocket did some damage.
that's the most graphic thing the MCU has ever shown. And I say shown because because Wanda destroying the Illuminati in Multiverse of Madness
That's
is
true. Yes.
largely alluded to.
Yes.
Like it's on screen, but it's not super graphic. That
Right.
was like a Gus in Breaking Bad.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Is
exactly what that
the
was like.
same vibe. Speaking of
If
when
only
is
he was wearing a tie and had fixed his tie and then died.
yeah when is Giancarlo Esposito coming to the MCU? Does anyone know?
Now.
He's in it. He and Pedro Pascal are in everything else.
Yeah. Also, I thought it was interesting too, like suddenly the Guardians get a moral compass and they're not going to kill anybody.
I think
Like,
part of the we're not going to kill anybody is because we know you're going to stay here and die anyway.
right.
It's very much Batman
I guess that
Begins
was yeah,
of like I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to
but
save
that
you.
yeah,
Is kind of how I look at that scene now. Um, yeah, I that is odd to me, but I feel like that could just be Rocket himself having character development in that moment.
could have been yeah, him just being like, "You know what? I don't want to be like you. I don't
Yeah,
want to be this twisted killer
yeah.
of a person." Raccoon.
We're burying what I thought might be the single most surprising development of this movie. I've talked about it before. To be a PG-13 movie, there are certain things that you can and cannot do. But one of the things that you can do in a PG-13 movie, you can have precisely one F bomb. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has the MCU's first uncensored F word. I don't know about you, Jay. It took me out of the moment a little bit because it was unexpected.
It was very unexpected, and I read somewhere that James Gunn actually hesitated in putting it in the movie because he thought the exact same thing. He was like, "This is gonna remove people from this movie."
I heard it was ad libbed.
Really?
I heard Chris Pratt ad libbed that on set because
Huh?
it's when they land on Counter Earth and they're getting in a car, an actual like Earth car,
It's
to
a really
drive to
funny
the
scene though.
ship. And no, it makes sense, and it's just like, oh, that happened. I also read earlier today that when you're in that movie and you only get one, it's preferred to be at least 1 hour into the movie. I think that's a really interesting timing dynamic, and this one was an hour
Interesting,
and 6 minutes into the movie, so
because
check.
at that point, I guess
The tone is established, I guess.
this, I guess, and then also like if the parents wanted to leave and take their kid with them, it would be at the beginning of the movie instead of the middle of the movie.
Yeah, I think that's
It's like,
probably
well,
true.
we've got an hour in. We need to figure out. I want to see what happens with the stupid raccoon.
Yeah. But it just like the thing that disappointed me the most about that is like I walked out of the theater and I was talking to Meg. And I was like, if I had known I got one and I could put it anywhere, this was before I knew the hour into the movie thing, I would have put it in so many different places than that.
Yeah. Um.
That
So the actors that play Merry and Pippin in Lord of the Rings, they they had an
they're the
interview one
best.
time where they were talking about it, and they said, the Lord of the Rings is rated PG-13, which means that you could put one F word. And so he
In
was
each
like,
movie.
where in the movie would you put it?
They were having so much
They
fun
were
with it too. It was
oh,
so
they were
great.
having so much fun. It's so funny.
The effing Buckleberry Fairy.
Oh man. But yeah, it's so positives about this movie. Um I very much loved the whole story was really good. There is really nothing about it that I didn't, you know, like there was nothing that was like glaring that was like really bad about it. Like it was all very enjoyable. Um I did think that one thing that would have made it better, in my opinion, is the ending where all of the Guardians are standing there together and they all start talking about where it is that they want to go. And, you know, Peter's like, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna go back to Earth. You know, Drax is. Oh, when she said, this was the part that made me tear up when she was like, "You're not Drax the Destroyer. You're Drax the parent,
Drax the dad.
Drax the father." And I was like, ah, that was great. So he got all his kids back. It was really sweet. But then Groot then says, "I love you guys,"
I
which
hated
was
that,
really
dude.
cool. Which was really cool because what it was alluding to was we finally understand him.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where it should have ended, was right there. Like, just go to black right after that. I would have been satisfied. I was like, ah, that's where they should have ended it. End on that note.
I in the moment I did not make that association. So I feel like you have to go on from that. Because sitting in the theater when Groot says something other than "I am Groot," I was just like, "Yeah, no, I'm out." I thought that was I did not enjoy that at all. I liked it more. This is like you were saying, as far as the story goes, everything makes sense. There are not
Yeah.
things other than like you said earlier, kind of shoehorning the Sovereign and Adam Warlock into to various points throughout the plot. It makes sense. The big picture, it works. But I remember it was towards the end of the movie, there were a few like scenes and frames that like kind of just gave me that like feeling that I did not like. So like when Peter is dying in space and he's going back to
Oh,
get
yeah.
his Zune and he's like stretching out to reach towards nowhere, and then it focuses in on his finger, and then Adam Warlock's finger comes in from the other side and it recreates I think it's Michelangelo.
Yeah. The
It's a
creation of man.
yeah, and it's just like, man, that's not even subtle. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't work for that. You just made it happen. And I didn't much care for that at all. Um and then also kind of like we talked about earlier, the like he has a mask and he has rocket boots, like none of this should have mattered. Um I don't know. Really really small stuff like that. And when it's small stuff that bothers me, I feel like that's the sign of a pretty solid movie. Um I don't know what this is like with your professional opinion, but like this movie was heavy, man.
It's very heavy.
Like the first Guardians of the Galaxy is fun. The second one tries too hard. And this one is just like, all right, hey, you know all that like world building and character development that we did? What if we made this just like emotionally devastating?
Yeah, it was a very emotion driven movie. Like it pulls you several different directions emotionally. Is what it did, but it did it very well, I thought. I thought it like it was executed very well and builds on the characters that much more. Which was good because knowing that this is the last one, it's like, yeah, you want that to happen because you want to leave having all these really positive thoughts about these characters. And so you get to see them fully. You got a mosquito too, don't you?
No, it was
I
starting to
saw
get
you look up real
it was
quick.
starting to get hot in here, and I was like, did I turn the ceiling fan on when I came in here? And I did
Oh,
not.
okay.
So
Oh, but yeah, so it I don't know. It ends very well. All the characters get exactly what was needed for their character development, and it just all ends very good. And I
it
was
ends
very
so
satisfied.
well. Yeah.
And I this is kind of my final hot take on the movie, but honestly, and maybe this is just because I'm getting older and I don't feel like I can relate to the new Marvel stuff very much anymore, but it kind of just felt like a farewell to the MCU in general. Like it just kind of felt like this is it. This is the end. Thanks guys. It's been a fun ride. Because the only characters that are left that I really care about now are like really Spider-Man, and that's pretty much it. Um and so it felt like a good ending, like a good it was almost like an epilogue to
To
the
the Infinity
whole
Saga.
Infinity Saga. It was like,
Yeah.
hey, here's the epilogue to wrap up a few last things and thanks.
I think that's fair. Um I think as far as like looking forward for the MCU in general, everything about the future of the MCU to me personally hinges on how well they bring in the Fantastic Four and how well they bring in mutants. Because, like you were saying, so many of the characters that we've spent the last 15 years investing in are either not major players or not in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep investing in new characters and keep learning more about all of these new people, or are we going to move on to something else? And I feel like a lot of people are, and I'm going to assume on your behalf, are in the same boat as you are, where you're like, well, nothing's grabbed me in a while, but something else over here could. So I'm going to go over
Potentially.
here. And I don't know. I don't think you're wrong for that at all, because I mean this movie is incredible. It's very very good in my opinion. But it does end with that sense of finality of something that could be greater than itself. So, I don't know. I always sit here and say when we talk about it, I say that I'm not super worried about the future of the MCU or what it's going to look like. But I kind of am, just because this is a big ask. Like even this movie being, because the first Guardians of the Galaxy, we didn't know what to expect and we were hooked. And the second one is like, oh, it's kind of, there are some emotional elements, but it's fun. There are a lot of emotional elements to this movie, and none of them are fun.
Mm-mm.
To me at least. So I I don't know. Um I do want to take a second to talk about Rocket's friends at the High Evolutionaries during his flashbacks with Lila, Teefs, and Floor. Um, Floor is terrifying.
Yeah.
Floor is a rabbit who has had her legs removed. She has a creepy like muzzle over her mouth, and she talks like this rabbit had emphysema or something, like with a voice box in her throat. And she looks terrifying. She has little like spider legs, like the head in Toy Story at Sid's house. And she is the happiest one of the four of them by far.
Yeah.
And it shook me for a while.
Yeah.
But
That
seeing,
was that was weird.
yeah,
It
but
was unsettling.
it was unsettling, but like we said before, it feels necessary.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
weirdest
well, I mean,
thing.
it helped you understand the they did a very good so what they did was is they took the one thing that like everybody can care about, right? Anybody who's anybody that cares for anything is going to have a soft spot for animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they did. They took that and they were like, we're just going to stab it really hard.
Yep. Yeah.
And so as soon as they did that, you were like, this guy is evil. Like there was no doubt in your mind. You were like, this is not a good person.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. And you know, but then you even see like how he treats humans too, like his own human, you know, people that worked for him, like they were even mistreated and tortured and, you know, had these horrible augmentations done to them. And but yeah, so I agree, like it was creepy and it was awful to look at, but it was necessary to get the point across.
Yeah. And then another point that I would like to make is there's a really cool scene when Groot and Peter are on the High Evolutionary ship, and to get on the ship, Peter had to be scanned for weapons, and they didn't think to scan Groot for whatever reason. Um, but earlier in the scene, we saw Peter hand Groot his guns, and he says, "You know what to do." And anyone who watched the trailer knew what was going to happen, because in the trailer there's the scene of Groot. There's a scene from the shootout on the ship where Groot has like 12 guns and Peter has his gun, and they're just blowing everybody away. Can you imagine what that scene would have been like if it hadn't been in a trailer?
Oh, I know.
Like the sense of awe that I felt knowing it was going to happen, like magnified so much when it's just like, oh, this is oh, this is great. Like that's I wish we could have had that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that tree is shooting 6 guns.
It's raised in the South. And then also was the fight scene once Rocket is back functioning, the fight scene when they're all in that hallway, that feels like one of the
Oh
better
yeah, I
Marvel
forgot about
fight
that.
scenes we've had in a long time.
That was probably the best Marvel fights hallway fight scene we've ever had. That was incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
I had
I
to
don't mean
explain
hallway
that
fight scene. I mean just in general.
fight scene. Yeah, no, I except for maybe the beginning of Ultron, Age of Ultron.
Uh that the
I
beginning of
really enjoyed that beginning.
that one gets a huge minus for me because it has the scene where they all line up,
Pose.
but it's like Hawkeye's crashed his motorcycle and his body is contorted, which is oddly foreshadowing for Jeremy Renner's life. Um, what was that too
Oh dear.
much? I feel like that might have been too much.
Too soon? Was that too soon? Oh man. Yeah, but so I had to explain to my son about the hallway scenes because he hadn't seen Daredevil. Um and so I was like that was the best hallway fight scene we've ever seen. But yeah, I agree that may have been the best just overall fight scene.
Like the rewatchability of that to me is ludicrous because it's so fast paced, but it's also in slow mo.
Mhm.
Like it's a really weird mixture of pacings, but it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man,
It was great. Well, so let's as far as ratings go, um I won't do a 1 to 10 yet, but definitely as far as movie order for Guardians of the Galaxy, like best to worst is definitely 1, 3, 2 for me.
I
Um
think this one pips it for me. It's 3-1-2 for
three
me.
one two.
I think it's Lila actually says it in when he's in when Rocket's in limbo, says this story has been about you all along. You just didn't notice it or something to that
Mm,
extent. So it's a really interesting subversion of the trilogy as being about Rocket the whole
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So I found that to be really interesting. And
Yeah,
also
now I want
like
to rewatch them.
I'm a different person now than I was when Guardians of the Galaxy came out in 2014. So would I have handled this movie as well as I did now? 9 years ago, no. I've grown, I've changed, like I've had life experiences. And I feel like that's like that builds onto why I like this better than the first one. Like this has so much depth. I don't know. This is better than the first one to me.
Hmm.
But 2 is far and away
Oh yeah.
the
No,
worst
there's
of
a
the
lot of
3.
spaces for me with that 1, 3, 2. There's a lot of spaces
I
before
feel
you get to
like
2.
I tell you the trilogy that I feel like the easy comparison is Indiana Jones.
Mm.
You can make
Yes.
the argument for either one, but there is
Hmm.
a clear third place.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 is number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an excellent comparison. But you haven't seen Dial of Destiny yet, so you know,
Yes, the fourth
just
Indiana Jones movie.
hold on to your britches, cause
Excuse you, sir. Talking about my britches.
on a 1 to 10 though, I hesitate in giving it a 10 because it's not perfect. Um, but I definitely give it a 9.
I am in that same boat. I was gonna give it a 9.5.
Yeah,
Just because there
I
are
mean
enough
it's
there are enough things in there that stop it from being a true 10,
yeah,
but not
it
enough that stops it
is
from being any lower.
it is up there. We're gonna have to do another MCU in review
I will
now
say
that
I would be much more wary about watching this with kids.
I would
Um
too.
I know we kind of ran into it we ran into it a lot as a society when Deadpool came out of like, oh, it's a superhero movie, kids can go to these, it'll be fine. Obviously, if you did that with Deadpool, you were not paying attention. But I feel
True.
like the assumption of like, oh, this is an MCU movie, it'll be safe. This movie, like, I,
I
I
would
know,
say I would argue that it pushes the envelope probably more so than even Multiverse of Madness. Because, Multiverse of Madness, they were like, this is the first horror movie, and this is going to be the closest thing to like rated R content that we've had type of deal. And it was like, I don't know. This one might be worse.
I don't know that I would say it's worse so much as it is. I think it is equally. It pushes the envelope equally, but in a different way. Like they are both far and away like the most not questionable because I ultimately I enjoy them both, but like,
I guess what I'm thinking of is Multiverse of Madness was fear. Like it was just like terror.
mm-hmm,
And this one was more like
trauma.
trauma,
Yeah,
which is just it's a different part of the brain. It's a different it hits different. And it's got more emotion tied to it.
yeah. It's also the casual violence that you associate in a superhero movie feels more graphic in this.
Yes.
So I would say that's another note to have because it is still PG-13, so there's only so much they can really do.
Right.
But there's it is a little bit different. I'll say. So Jay gives it a
Whew.
9. I give it a 9.5. It is as strong a recommend as we've had. Well, no, we really recommended Dungeons and Dragons, but we also admitted that it was not great.
This one is near perfect.
Yeah, it's
It
exceptional,
really
and
is.
it's a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. The soundtrack is fun. The characters, like, by and large, you do know them by now if you're at all invested in the MCU. I do say it does not stand alone well, I will say.
No. No,
So I
you
mean I feel
have
like
to have
that's
seen.
a
And
caveat
then
for it.
even with the and I'll say it again, I know you don't agree with me, but um it's also one of those not as heavily as Multiverse of Madness, but it definitely watching the shows and the specials that are on Disney Plus are going to help
Hmm.
with your understanding of it all because Peter and Mantis are um, brother and sister. You find out in the holiday special, and so if you hadn't watched that, you wouldn't know that. Um, and you know, I personally, I know John disagrees with me. We've talked about it in detail before, but I think that that's what's going to end up being the downfall of the MCU is just how close these shows are going to be tied to the movies now.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people that they don't care to watch, they don't want to have to do homework. They
Yeah.
want to go to the movie, they want to watch the movie and enjoy it and not have to watch all this other stuff that comes with it. So, it's I don't know. I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah. I can't. I can't disagree with any of that because I completely understand your premise. So
But anyway, real quick, let me put the socials out there because I'm really bad at reminding everybody. But if you want to follow John, you can follow him on Twitter, jmueller8332. He is also on Twitch. You can follow him with the same handle. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. The nerd is underscore in. You can also follow the show, TDAU underscore pod. And then if you would like to send us an email with any questions or comments or concerns or recommendations, we would love to hear them. Um, you can reach us at they didn't ask us at gmail.com. But that is our socials. Next time, like I said, we are going to be talking about some video game stuff, just something fun. Um,
lighten the mood a little bit before we hit summer.
yeah, just something fun for us to talk about. We won't get serious about anything. There might be some fun news to talk about. I don't know. Maybe we'll have finished Visions by then.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe I'll have started
Who?
Visions by then.
Yeah, in the watching it in the daylight because it's dark.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll be back in 2 weeks with that bonus episode. But until then, nerd out.